Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another thing where I talk about things. Today, I've got a cold, and I've got a lozenge because I tried to do this video yesterday, and it was like right as the sickness was setting in. Like I had a terrible sore throat, and I'd been to the DMV that morning. So what I'm trying to do, and this is so upsetting. I'm trying to submit paperwork so I can get some paperwork, so I can go and submit some more paperwork, so that I can get paperwork which I can then turn in to have the final paperwork that says that I live in Missouri, and they can take my taxes. It's kind of ridiculous. It's like I need my car title to prove that I own the car so that I can then submit to register my car and so on and so forth. And I'm so late on all this stuff because I've had so many things happen. Like, Claudia and I got married, so Claudia got her name changed. Then after the name change, we had to change our insurance. And, I don't know. It's frustrating because they give you like a time limit to do all these things. I think we have like 1 month. We're supposed to have this all done in a single month. And maybe if you were just like casually moving and there were no life changes, like that would make sense. But for a person who like moved to a new state because of a change in their life, it's quite a lot to do. I mean, even now, like I say, like all the insurance changes and everything else. So, yeah, sore throat, not feeling very good. Been at the DMV all morning. Like I had to go there twice because the first time I went to the DMV, it was a 5-hour wait. So instead, what I did is I bailed on that because I went in the afternoon. So I had to bail on that and then go back again. Like I was on Friday, and then on Monday I had to like wake up early and then drive down to the DMV like first thing. Then I spent like 2 hours down there, and while I was at the DMV, the power went out. So like all the computers turned off, and like the screens were black, and like everybody was just like we all kind of grumbled. And it was sort of funny because like it wasn't like nobody got mad. Like there was a bunch of people in this building, but like no one lost their temper. It was just sort of like everyone just kind of grumbled. It was just like, blah, 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 blah. And a couple people got up to ask if they'd like lost their place in line because of this, but they hadn't. So we all kind of just sat back down and waited for the power to come back on. And then it did, and everyone had to reboot their computers, and It added like 30 minutes onto the day. So, yeah, when I did this video yesterday, basically I didn't say anything nice. I was just like, I don't want to say that I felt too grumpy, but everything that I said, I just basically tore into the Fallout universe. I listed all the things that were bad about it. And that wasn't really the impression I wanted to give, because I really I like the Fallout universe. Like, it's got a very charming mix of a lot of different things. Like, I like the adventure format of the games. I kind of like the way that you bounce around from place to place and you find out these things. The exploration is always really cool. And that's a big appeal for all the Bethesda games right now, as everybody likes to go and find all these dungeons and explore the dungeons and find out the mysteries. I in particular really like the vaults. I like to explore the vaults and see all the wild experiments that were going on in those things. But at the very start, though, I really like the whole concept that they take, where they're like, well, what if that old 1950s view of like science fiction were true? And you got all these robots, but they were like these big, clunky-looking things, and you have supercomputers, but they like take up whole rooms, and the nuclear bomb scares were all real and true and all this other stuff. And yeah, it's all kind of really cool because it takes everything to a slightly kind of more fantastical world. Like we have a better understanding of that technology now, so we know why that stuff doesn't work. So in a way, it kind of takes it like it's not even science fiction, because we know at this point, like nobody believes that the science would work like this. It becomes kind of like fantasy. And so they're sort of able to just create like fantasy. I mean, that's sort of what science fiction is anyway, but they just sort of create this like fantasy around like, well, what if they'd been right about these things? And they can kind of introduce any sort of elements they want, so long as it sort of fits that theme. So like with Old World Blues, we got to see, the giant robo-scorpions, because that was, kind of a Pulp Fiction sort of thing, but it was along that same line of like old school science fiction. Like, of course you could build giant robots. I mean, that was in everything back in the day. You saw lots of stuff like that. So yeah, the whole setting, the whole concept of the setting is kind of cool in the first place. It's actually a lot of fun to tinker in. And it's inherently ridiculous, which is why the Mike and Lou thing was so fun to do. The way that happened was the guy who was making that mod, I believe that he was a big fan of the Queen Latifah Let's Play. And so he actually sent me an email, and he just said, hey, I'm making this mod. It's a radio mod, and I'm looking for people to do like radio shows. Like I got a lot of music, but I don't have a lot of like radio personalities or commercials or things to fill this stuff out. So would you have anything that you would want to contribute to a mod like this? Like you seem to really like the Fallout universe. Would you be cool to add something to it? And I was like, oh yeah, I got this really great idea. I really love this show called Car Talk. Some of you guys noticed the similarities. So the similarities between Car Talk and this thing I did. But I really like Car Talk. Whenever I used to go to lunch when I worked at CVS, that was right around when Car Talk came on. I think it was usually like 1 o'clock or whatever, and that was my typical lunchtime when I worked at CVS. So I would go to like the Sonic drive-thru, not really because I liked Sonic, but because I liked Car Talk, and I would just sit in the car and listen to Car Talk while I waited for them to deliver me a terrible Coney chili dog or whatever, a cheese dog, and like I just really like to listen to Car Talk. So I was like, oh yeah, like I have some really funny ideas, and I kind of want to do like Car Talk characters and have sort of a radio show where people call in with their wasteland problems. And then, like, these characters just kind of talk it out, and they, it'd be a good comedic thing. I probably also could have done amusing commercials, too. But yeah, that was the thing that I wanted to do. So I put up a bunch of scripts, and then I did the voice acting. I got some friends. What's funny is the Finland is fine thing. I can't remember what inspired that necessarily. I think it might have been a discussion about, like, what happened to Europe in the Fallout universe. Like, I don't know if it's ever been established what happened to Europe. I think I've heard they were not hit as hard as the U.S., but I think that I've also heard that maybe they were blown completely off the map. But anyway, though, it's like this question of like what happened to Europe, and I have a couple of friends, or I know at least two people who are Finnish, and one of them volunteered to do a voice, and I think that the joke that we made was like, everyone in Finland is kind of like, they like their personal space, and they all kind of like respectfully don't really, make eye contact or talk with each other or whatever. And so we were just kind of joking about like how antisocial everyone is in Finland. So that script came about as like, well, what if Finland didn't get hit by the bombs? And then like, they just called into this radio station and they were like, just hello, just, I wanted to solve the riddle. But they didn't want to like bother anyone, so they never bothered to contact the U.S. to make sure everyone was okay. If the U.S. wanted help, they would contact Finland. Finland, just antisocial as a country, doesn't want to get involved. They have to leave the house, and that's just weird. So yeah, but I looked up like the ranges on ham radios, and I don't believe that you can like I think you can extend the range of a ham radio. In certain ways, but if you just go with the absolute range of a ham radio, they don't get higher than like 600 miles. So realistically, you couldn't call with a ham radio from Europe, especially not if you had to relay it through several stations or whatever it is they might do, in the apocalypse anyway, in the post-apocalypse. And I apologize for the sniffles. I know that can be awful in the mic. I hope it doesn't pick up too badly. But anyway, though, so it kind of added this element of uncertainty to the whole skit, where if Europe had just called in, that's kind of lore-breaking to the games, because, theoretically, Europe probably got bombed. But if it's like, maybe this is a guy from, like, one of the Vault experiments, and he just really believes that the Vault is Finland, you have no way of knowing. Like, the Vault thing is just crazy. And you never know what you're going to get in the vault, so it's very practical, given the Fallout universe, to assume that you would get a call from a vault dweller who was just convinced that their vault was Finland, because they'd been raised to believe that their entire life, and that was the kind of things they did in the vault. So the vaults are really great. The vaults are just this really interesting, like, they open up all these opportunities for, like, what kind of weird thing were we doing down here? And there's all kinds of great elements for that sort of like bizarre, funny science fiction. Like I say, the whole old world blues thing was just heavily steeped in that, and I really love the old world blues for New Vegas. Now, like I said, I did in the previous video just tear Fallout apart, and most of what it was that I was pulling apart was in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. They both kind of suffered from the problem of feeling really empty. And this is weird because they're not empty, they're very densely packed, like there's a lot of stuff. And I kind of wonder from a game design perspective, if this doesn't come about, like if you look at New Vegas, like New Vegas actually feels very densely populated. There's not very much in it compared to the other games, like the map is much smaller. There's not really as much to see, but everywhere you go, there's like people and some relation to human problems, like you find these, like every little cave, every little vault, there's someone who wants you to go there and find something for them, There's really kind of a reason to visit all of the places in New Vegas. And when I first played Fallout 3, like I really liked the exploration aspect of things enough that I know that I got the Explorer thing in New Vegas for sure because I really wanted to see everything in New Vegas. Like I was really invested, and I'm pretty sure that there's the Explorer thing in Fallout 3 too. Um, I'm almost positive because I'm pretty sure I did the same thing where I got that Explorer perk, and if not, then I just did whatever I could to find all the locations. And I tried to just go and like see all the things, not necessarily do all the quests because the quests can get a little a little samey. It's like go here and kill all these things, clean out this area. But I did just kind of want to like see everything, and there's a lot to see in Fallout 3 and presumably Fallout 4. I actually didn't get very far into Fallout 4, but most of it's kind of meaningless. Like you just sort of go into these places and it's like this is a dungeon. It's packed full of monsters. You get to the end of the dungeon and you gather up the loot and then you sell the loot and you have more money for more ammunition. You go and you kick down the next door and you find more monsters. And that's kind of the way that went. And well, not terrible. It's not really very it's not engaging in a world building sense. And that was one thing I really kind of wanted more out of with Fallout 3. Like, all the settlements felt like they were heavily disconnected from each other. Like, you would go to Megaton, and there were just these people, and they would talk about these caravans. They acted like people were traveling from point A to point B, but then you'd go down to that old battleship, Rivet Town, I think it was called, and there was no sense that anyone could have gone from, like, Megaton to Rivet Town, because there was no real, like, path, there was no sane path to get there. Because everything on the way to Rivet Town from Megaton was just like, it was like mutant attacks and like all kinds of horrible things. It was awful. Like, there was no safety going from point A to point B. So, same thing with like you found the Pentagon where the Brotherhood of Steel was living, and they were also similarly isolated. So everyone just felt like very isolated in Fallout 3. And although they might send you out to go do things, they really kind of focused almost exclusively on the main plot point, which was the water purification thing. Which there's kind of a really funny breakdown on that whole quest line, where it's like everyone has this overwhelming consensus that we need to purify the water. So, everyone is fighting over whether or not they can purify the water. Now, I know that in the game, I think the big spat was about whether or not it was going to purify, like I think they wanted to do some kind of genetic purification where it was going to like kill all the mutants or whatever. But as I recall, I believe that you had the option to do the genetic purification, but if you did it, it turned out it just didn't work, and you just got pure water that everyone could drink normally. I don't know how like the water would kill genetic impurities, like how that would work, but that was what the game proposed would happen. And anyway, though, yeah, so Fallout 3, though, too, that was another thing that was strange, was that you really didn't get to involve yourself a lot in the world. I mean, like, you kind of, there was the Enclave, and they were bad guys, like, and you really never saw things from their perspective. You wouldn't be brought to understand why they did what they did. And then there was, like, the Brotherhood of Steel, which were the good guys. And I know a lot of people really complained about the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3 being the good guys, because they're supposed to be, like, violent, hoarders of technology. They're not really supposed to be like, oh, hello, outsider, welcome in. But one thing that I thought was really funny, though, about Fallout 3 is one of the most memorable playthroughs I had was one where I kind of fell completely off the rails because I was playing this character called Maneater Morty, where I'd seen that I could take the cannibalism skill, and then anyone I killed, I could eat. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to do one playthrough where I just kill everyone on sight, and I'll work my way up until I'm leveled enough that I can just wipe out settlements and then eat everybody in the settlement, and that'll be my goal. And then once I get to that point, I guess I'll just quit playing, because once I can conquer all the known world and kill everyone in it, then there's nothing more to do. This has been after I'd beaten the game in a sane way a couple of times. You do this, you play these games through a few times, and then you say, like, well, now I'm going to try this insane thing. And I've done this a couple of times. Sometimes it's kind of rewarding to play that character, because you find out it's really difficult, and it takes a lot of, like, careful planning to wipe out a settlement, because there's so many people in them, or you got to be quick on the trigger. It takes more skill to kill all the NPCs than it does to kill a room full of mutants, it turns out. So, anyway, though, one of the things that Maneater Morty did is I went to the Brotherhood of Steel bunker, and there's this lady who's like, hey, if you find any dead Brotherhood of Steel soldiers, and you bring me their dog tags, I'll pay you money. And this was hilarious to me because, like, this creates one of those karmic pathways, and I don't know if this was intentional, but, like, you know, dead Brotherhood of Steel members, you find them all over the wasteland, right? Or you could make new ones by killing the ones that you find, and then you just take their dog tags and you bring them back to this lady. It's like she put a bounty on their heads. So one of the things that I did with Maneater Morty is that I would just sneak around the Brotherhood of Steel and then surprise kill them. And that would cause no one else to be alerted to the murders, you know? Like, no one would be like, oh, who did this? I know, it was the only guy that could have done this. They would just let it go, because that's how these games are programmed. And so I just, like, I systematically killed everyone in the bunker, and then gave her, like, all the dog tags from everyone who I just murdered. And then she's like, all right, here's your huge reward for the bounty I just put on all my friends. And I was like, gee, thanks. Then I slapped her in the back of the head, and I can't recall if she was, like, an essential NPC or not, but I know I definitely tried to kill her. And it was great, too, because not only did I kill them, but because I was playing a cannibal, and my goal was to eat the wasteland, I would kill people and then eat them. And so it was just, like, the most terrible thing. And she never should have sent me to go do this. She never should have told me she'd pay me to bring dog tags. That was so terrible. In Fallout New Vegas, they corrected that by having it to where the enemy of whatever camp, they would be like, all right, you go and bring me the enemy's dog tags and I'll reward you. So the practical thing to do in that case was to find the corpses of already dead soldiers, or to kill them yourself, and then bring them to the enemies of those soldiers, rather than being like, yeah, you find proof that our own guys are dead and I'll pay you. You know, because again, the incentive there is to make people be dead. You know, that's the whole point. So, yes, pretty amusing. I think I kind of like that New Vegas sort of learned a lesson from that. They were like, oh yeah, collecting dog tags, but not our own guys' dog tags. The other team's dog tags. Bring me their trophies. Bring me their heads as a trophy. Don't bring your own guys. So yes. So there was that, and then there was another thing that I really liked about the Maneater Morty playthrough is I went to go play this DLC called Operation Anchorage, and what that was it was like essentially a way to get power armor training, which I needed to have Operation Anchorage to do, because I had killed all the Brotherhood of Steel members and was not really on good terms with them. Like, you know, when you play the game and your insistence is that you're going to ruin everything, it gets pretty hard to get the perks that you have to learn from people. But Operation Anchorage would give you these perks, and also the stealth suit, the Chinese stealth suit, which everyone knew was like the most broken piece of armor in the game. But anyway, Operation Anchorage was interesting because what it did is it put you into this simulation where you were supposed to be defending Alaska, I think it was, from the Chinese. And when you killed people, they would disappear because they were like holograms, they were simulations. But there was a brief second where they would lie on the ground and you could crouch down and like you could try to loot their bodies. Their bodies were generally empty, but you could also tell the game that I wanted to feast on the corpse. And so the whole point of this is that it was like training you, and if you passed it, then you could become an officer and then get into the armory. That was the point of this whole thing. But I thought it was funny because, like, if you like were really fast, you could eat the corpses of the Chinese enemies that you killed, which would be horrific. It's like horrific, really. But the program didn't care. It was just like, okay, yeah, all right, so he's gonna kill and eat the Chinese. That's fine. I mean, that's a little nuts, but you know, we need a little bit of nuts in such a tough environment. So okay, all right, we'll support that. And they let you keep going. And I thought, like, man, that's wild. Like, I wonder what else I can get away with. And so at some point, like, the game gives you power armor and, like, a power fist and all the equipment and, like, some friends to help you out so that you can get through the areas a little bit easier. And I thought to myself, you know what? I don't need this entire army. I don't need the American army. So there was, like, a reporter there. He was, like, taking pictures. He's like, say cheese. You know, I'm taking a picture of the triumphant whatever, so-and-so. And so I just, like, socked the reporter in his mouth, killing him. And then I bent down and I ate his corpse, which of course caused all the Americans to turn on me. Because, you know, the reporter was considered to be on their side. So everyone went to battle with me, but in Fallout 3, when you went into VATS, you were invincible. And I believe that they had the Grim Reaper sprint ability that made it to where you fully recovered VATS every time you killed someone. So I was able to punch the entire US military to death. And then there was no one left in the camp. It was amazing. I completely wiped out the entire encampment there. Like, everyone. I killed the reporters. Like, I killed and ate a reporter. And the simulation program didn't have any problem with that. It didn't like look at that and be like, that's a little unstable. This may not be officer material. It was like, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, if you survive that, that's cool. That's good. So, yes, it allowed me to just continue on, and I got to the end of it, and it made me officer. And that just really, it just cracked me up so much that I had done probably, like that would be such a thing. Like, can you imagine a U.S. officer? Like, imagine the news stories if a U.S. officer, like, punched someone in the press to death and then ate them in front of his fellow men. And then when they tried to apprehend him, he turned around and murdered the entire camp. You know, not just like one or two guys in the struggle, but the entire military camp all by himself. And then he went on to go kill all the Chinese that had been there. You know, it is just like, what? Like, what is going on? You would expect that he was some kind of like weird mutated like superhuman something or other. It would just be insane. So yeah, this simulation probably shouldn't have let me get away with that. That should have been mission failed, but it wasn't. You know, it was totally okay. And I was really shocked that I got away with that. But Fallout 3 did that to me a couple of times. I remember when I first played the game, you get that opening scene where you're like with your dad, and your dad gives you this BB gun, and he's like, it's about time that you learn to shoot. Like, I trust you, son. Here's a BB gun. Go out and shoot those targets. And one thing that you do in those kinds of games, or one thing you do in a lot of games, is you like to test the game designers to see what limits they imposed on you. You know, if they tell you not to do a thing, like I remember in GoldenEye, they'd be like, don't shoot Natalia. And so I would immediately shoot Natalia. And this resulted in some funny things, because there was like some missions where like you could shoot Natalia, but it wouldn't be game over until she actually hit the floor and then started to vanish. So like you could actually end a mission where you would shoot Natalia, and before she hit the floor, you could run through the exit, and then the game would declare the mission over and say that you had won successfully, but then the cutscene would show you running away, and then like Natalia would just be like falling flat on her face and dying, which I used to think was really funny. So at the end of that mission, I would always shoot Natalia and then run out the door. So you know, you test the game and you see what you can get away with. And the voice acting was good enough from the dad in Fallout 3 that I didn't immediately test him. I didn't want him to be disappointed in me or take away my BB gun, so instead I followed his directions and I shot at the targets. But when I played Maneater Morty, the first thing I did was I shot my dad in the eye with the BB gun. And I was rather disappointed and shocked to find that Dad does not respond to that. He does not even acknowledge that you just willingly like pointed the gun at his eyeball, made sure that you had a good beat on it, and then shot him in the eye. Like, game does not mind. They don't take the BB gun away. They just wait for you patiently to shoot the targets. So, yeah, little weird. Fallout 3 doesn't always anticipate, like, for having a karma system, it doesn't always seem to anticipate evil, oddly enough. I don't know why that they wouldn't anticipate the player being mischievous like that. I mean, you give a child a BB gun, one of the first things you should be thinking about is safety and whether or not the child is going to shoot someone they shouldn't, and they just don't have a program for that. I don't know why, but for the longest time I didn't test the game, so I had no idea that there was no like failure state for that. So yeah, I mean, they had failure states for other things. Like, it always cracked me. It cracked me up that there's this scene where like Butch, the vault bully, is like picking on Amata, your like friend, and so you can just run up and like. You can be like, hey, Butch, quit picking on Amata, you know, she's great and you're dumb. Or you can join in. You can bully Amata like an asshole if you want. And, you know, this establishes your relationship to Amata later, where, like, maybe Amata really doesn't like you. Or maybe she does really like you. You know, it doesn't really change the story, honestly. But it makes you feel like you're establishing your own personality more, and that was the important thing. But with Maneater Morty, I remember just being again, really amused by the fact that, like, as soon as they let me go, you could just get out your fists, and I just immediately ran up and punched everyone. I think that what I might have done is I might have also hit Amata. I think I beat everyone unconscious. Like, I just savagely attacked everybody, and then, like, I think that the game, not sure how to handle that, had Amata thank me afterward for beating up Butch, even though I'm pretty sure I hit her a good number. I think I might have punched her unconscious. I don't know. The game only had so much capacity to predict the player. But yes, Fallout New Vegas, though, I think was my favorite iteration of the first-person Fallout games. I never played the 1 and 2. I've seen it, and it looks like it probably would be up my alley. I'd probably enjoy the games, but I haven't played them. But anyway, though, yeah, New Vegas was the one that I really liked because although it was smaller, it felt like the world was more put together. Everywhere you went, there was like organization and humanity, and you kind of understood everybody's motives. It wasn't like, go here and do this because I said so, or it wasn't like, we're battling over this weird, like, I am an evil ideology, whatever. I mean, like, everyone you ran into had some kind of reason for doing what they did, and they wanted you to help them out so they could get, like, leverage over someone else. And the choices you made a difference. Like, if you helped the Crimson Caravan, then it would hurt other people. If you helped the Van Graffs, then it would wind up killing, Cassidy. So on and so forth. Like, there were winners and losers in these scenarios, and you kind of had to make that choice, which encouraged you to replay the game a little bit more than Fallout 3 did, because again, although there's less to see, with every place that you go to, there were more branches. And again, I feel like this is kind of a design philosophy. Some people really kind of like the Fallout 3 thing more, where there was just more stuff to look at, but I kind of like Fallout New Vegas more because every time you go someplace, it's sort of like, well, let me try this other option now. Like, instead of helping the Van Graffs, now I'll help Cassidy. And so you kind of figure out, like, which missions you enjoyed the most and which outcomes you like the most. And then, you kind of keep playing until you figure out, like, what path do I like, or what path is most suitable. You get to see all the different things. So you do the game over and over again. And not only are you trying different character builds, but you're also trying different quest options. And there's not just like the one quest. Oops. There's not just the one quest where you're trying to get to the end and activate the water or whatever. You're serving up to 4 different parties. It's either Mr. House, yourself, the NCR, or Caesar, Kaisar. And it's up to you to kind of choose how you want to do that. So again, like, you have all these different pathways that you can go through, and the person that you help, they offer very similar quests in a lot of cases, but there's also some different things. And you find that trust within the different factions unlocks different kinds of quests for you. So there's really just kind of a lot to do. And again, everything feels much more dense and much more alive, even though there's probably less to see in terms of sheer quantity. And then, of course, the DLCs were also a whole lot more varied. The Fallout 3 DLCs, they weren't bad, but I mean, like, they did things like they took you out to a swamp, and it was still sort of more the same philosophy of just there was, like, this wide expanse of stuff to see, but there was virtually nothing in them. Like, you would just kind of go out there, out in the woods, and there was, like, nothing there. So, I just remember, I don't really remember a whole lot about the DLCs, except for that there was a bunch of, like, swamp-related people living out there, swamp mutants. I guess they were supposed to be, like, super inbred humans or something like that. I don't know. But, yeah, New Vegas, they kind of got into, like, things like everywhere you went had something to do kind of with the main plot. And the only DLC that I didn't like in New Vegas was The Great Divide. And that was because I thought that Ulysses was completely stupid, and I really didn't like EDE very much either. Some people really liked EDE, but he mostly just annoyed me. I don't like when games try to tell me that robots have feelings, because, I mean, like, in the context of if you look at kind of what they're doing with neural networks, where they're trying to teach computers things, essentially what they're trying to do is simulate brains. And if you're going to say, like, okay, like, robots have personalities, robots have feelings, then you're kind of going to the route of, like, well, robots should become indistinguishable from humans in a lot of ways. They have these, like, neural networks where they're trying to learn, and they make mistakes, and maybe they think faster than people, but, like, you kind of have all these things going on. There's a lot of these questions, but when you kind of go with that sort of, like, thing, like, that's a theme that you would still get, like Blade Runner was very popular and so forth, but again, it was kind of more like, or Short Circuit was, I guess, another example of, like, a robot that but those things were all sort of endearing, and they focused a lot on, like, the robots learning about love and learning about human emotion and things like that. But when it's like EDE, all he's doing is he's playing these voice recordings of, like, him being a robot, and then people being like, don't hurt the robot, he also has feelings. And so it was kind of a tell not show sort of situation with EDE. It really bothered me because it was like, no, EDE has feelings. And this was all according to the guy who built EDE. And the guy who built EDE just sounded like a wet blanket to me. He was like, no one understands me, EDE. No one understands. I'm really sad, EDE. I don't know. Da, da, da. And so, in my opinion, EDE was a stupid robot, and he was just repeating recordings. And he had been programmed by this guy to go do this particular thing, and I really just wasn't engaged with EDE at all. Like, but he kept interrupting me. Like, the game doesn't provide the opportunity to give EDE like a real hint that you just don't care about, like, its fake emotions. So, you know, like, he continually stops you to play more recordings, and then there's like a little boy, and the little boy's like, look, Dad, it's a robot. It has feelings. And you know, it's just sort of like, shut up. I understand that everyone around you has been telling you that you have feelings, but believe me, you're just a little AI robot. You follow me around and you make annoying beeping sounds, and sometimes you play Wild Western music when there's enemies nearby. But aside from that, you don't indicate to me that you are a living, thinking creature, because you're not a sophisticated neural network. You're an AI that's programmed to follow me around because you're in a video game. So, yes. EDE is not really a living, thinking creature. It's just a little like if followers were smarter in New Vegas, maybe I would have been more like, okay, yes, EDE is a robot. But, you know, the followers already act like robots a lot on their own. And so when you make them actual robots, like, you lose that, like, okay, this is not even a flesh-made creature. This is like, it's a robot, you know? I guess if EDE was able to communicate with me like a human and was like, yes, you know, I feel like I have the family or whatever, it would still be weird. Because that was the other thing, is that EDE was one of the few NPCs that, like, forced itself on you like that. Like, that would stop you, that would apprehend the player to tell them about their past, you know, in like this really obnoxious, sugary kind of way. Like, you could talk to all the NPCs in Dead Money, you know, and find out about their pasts. In Old World Blues, you could talk to all the brains and find out about, you know, what their deals were. But that was an option that was given to you. It was not required. If you'd already seen that and you didn't want to see it again, you didn't have to. But in the Great Divide DLC, you gotta talk to EDE about how he's got feelings. He's got feelings and he's looking for his family or something. And you gotta listen. You just gotta stop. And of course, you also have to listen to Ulysses rant at you about the past. And again, it was one of the few times where you really you're forced to listen to Ulysses philosophize at you. You know, and it's all just total sophistry, you know? There's, like, nothing sensible. Like, everyone, like, I knew a lot of people who got really kind of annoyed at Ulysses, because it was like, you get into this big reveal that you actually blew up the Great Divide. It was you, Courier, you blew it up. I mean, you may not remember, because you got shot in the head or whatever, and you weren't there, and you actually didn't blow it up, you just delivered the trigger that blew it up, but you're still bad. And I'm still going to punish you. And I've seen defense of Ulysses, but just from a player standpoint. From my perspective, he was really annoying. So of all the DLCs that I tend to ignore or avoid when I play New Vegas, The Great Divide is the one, pretty much the only one, that I'll intentionally skip. And you notice that in the Let's Play, I kind of went into it for a little bit. And then it was a little bit difficult. Like, it was too tough for Queen Latifah, so I gave up on it and never went back to it. Because it really wouldn't have even played much into Queen Latifah's character. It would have been like, oh, just keep going through the Great Divide, Courier. Just keep doing it. Everything here wants to kill you. And Queen Latifah, as a character, wasn't the type to put herself at risk for no particular reason and then get scolded for it like she's the dumb one because she followed the one and only path laid out by the game developers, you know? That's another thing that's really annoying. I feel like it's not clever if the game developers give you one pathway and then, like, mock you for falling into that one pathway. They're like, oh, ho, you're so stupid. You fell right into my trap. And it's like, you know, I had to choose to get in the trap. Like, if I wanted to proceed with the game, if I wanted to move on to the next phase of the story, like, I had to go to the trap and then get inside it. So, you know, go to hell. Like, you're not clever. You railroaded me into this. Like, I don't know. Like, don't mock my intelligence. So, yeah, I don't know. I just did not like the Great Divide. And then Fallout 4 was interesting because I don't, like, some people are really hard on Fallout 4 And I don't hate it, but I got really tired of it really soon, really fast. One of the first things I think that happened with me in Fallout 4, I mean, like, first of all, you really don't get to roleplay in Fallout 4. Like, you make your character, but everyone has the exact same character. I've seen that joke. They're like, oh, I'm playing a dad who's lost his son, and he's now looking for a son. Like, who are you playing? They're like, oh, I'm an ex-military mother who's, like, lost her son. Like, what are you playing? Like, oh, I'm playing a dad who lost his son. What are you playing? So everyone was the same character by default. And one of the things that they do right off the bat is they give you like the power armor and all. So I get this impression that maybe Bethesda had marketers get a little bit too involved in the whole thing, and they were like, oh, you know what people really love that we can really market is the power armor. You know, it's the iconic feature of the whole franchise. So give the players power armor in the very first mission. And I knew that Fallout 4 did that, and so like when I first played the game, I immediately skipped like that first mission that they gave you because I didn't want to be fed power armor. And I've seen actual other Let's Plays, like there's this guy who did this comedy thing, and he did the same thing. They were like, here's your power armor, and he just like didn't get inside it. He was like, nope, I don't need this yet. I haven't earned it. And so he went to go fight the Raiders like without his power armor on, and then like the Deathclaw attacks, and he was like, oh, well, I guess I needed that power armor. And eventually he killed the thing, but it was just like this incredibly tedious fight, and it's like, this isn't really very cool, and I'm not really happy about this. So the power armor thing, the situation that I understand with that is that first off, it's limited by like the number of fusion batteries that you have. But gradually over time, you stockpile enough fusion batteries that it's no longer a limiting factor. And, that gets to be just kind of like, I don't know, then it just becomes tedious to have the power armor because it's like, oh, I got to put in another battery, hang on. It may as well just work like it did in the previous games. Like, just have me get the power armor towards the end of the game after I get my power armor training, have it be limited by a certain number of quests. Don't just, start the game and first mission, here's your power armor. It's the best armor in the game. Why do this? Why? I don't know why. So anyway, though, so I skipped all that because I didn't want to get the power armor. And then after that, I was really just totally aimless. And again, it's probably my fault because the game was probably going to try and set me on track to doing the story, which many people are critical of. But by skipping that first mission, I kind of really had nothing to do, and I got wrapped up in the Brotherhood of Steel. But every single mission was kind of like, go to the mall, and then collect a dozen eggs, and come back with those dozen eggs. And I can't remember what the significance of anything really was. Nobody really kind of impressed upon me the meaning of this. There were like 3 people in the Brotherhood that I had met, and they were like, yes, us 3 would like a dozen eggs. And I was just like, okay, all right, see you guys later. But it kind of went back to that Fallout 3 format of there just being like lots of stuff to see, but very little reason to go see it. You just kind of saw it for its own sake. And the gunplay improved and all. But, it was just weird. And that was that. It also gave itself a lot of jokes, which was good for the Fallout Let's Play, or not the Let's Play, the radio show, the Mike and Lou radio show. Because, you got into things like that very first one, that sort of the 10mm bait and switch. That was based on a thing that really happened to me in Fallout 4. Like, I came across this guy's body, and I just started the game out, so I was like, oh man, I could really use a lot of ammo. So this guy's got to be like some kind of arms dealer. He probably stashed like a whole bunch of 10mm ammo at this location, because he's going to sell this stuff, or there'd be a bunch of guns. And I was really shocked to find that, like, once I got down to that location, which was in a pretty dangerous part of town, that all that was there was just a 10mm gun. It wasn't even like a very valuable 10mm gun. It was a 10mm gun. It was like just a gun, like just a normal handgun. So I just like picked it up and I just like hawked it off to a vendor later on. I was like, what was the point of this? Like, why would you go through all the trouble to hide this and then die for it? Like, I didn't understand. I think they're radiant quests is what they are. Like, you just occasionally find, people with these notes on their body that say, go here for a gun. But, like, in terms of, like, logic, as far as, like, human motives, there are none. And so that kind of created a lot of avenues for comedy, because it's like, what mortal reason, what God-given reason could you have for putting a gun in this, like, in this ghoul-infested, hole in the wall, and then just why did this happen? Why did you do this? I don't know. So it wound up being more of a waste of ammo to go and find the gun than it was to, retrieve it. And it didn't help me at all to get the gun. I may as well have ignored the quest and just, like, sought out places. And the other thing too was that like at the end of each of those, it took the Skyrim route, where at the end of each of the dungeons, you know, there tended to be these big crates that were like full of stuff, and that was where I was getting most of my equipment from. So you know, I don't know, it was just weird. Fallout 4 was weird. It got really repetitive for me really fast, and then the blood bugs were really tedious. Like the blood bugs were hard to shoot, hard to hit, and gained health when they attacked you, and they did a lot of damage on top of that. And then the mutant suiciders, also strange, because like I can appreciate what they were trying to do with those, but the thing is that they give you that dog, like you just walk down the hill and then the dog runs up to you. And again, I feel like this is like marketing in action, you know. In Fallout 3, you had to go to the junkyard, and that's where you found the dog. And in New Vegas, you had to help the king, you know, and the king would give you the dog. And so you had to like earn the dog. You had to find the dog and you had to earn the dog. You know, you did things to get the dog, and then the dog had that much more value. But in Fallout 4, you just walk down the hill and the dog runs up to you, and then like that's it. Like you have the dog. Like he's just right there. And the same thing though, you walk a few more feet and it's like, here's your power armor. So here's your power armor, here's your dog. You've got the iconic features of the Fallout universe right here at your fingertips right now. And you know, I just don't get like why do this? Why not make the player feel like they worked for it? You know, why not make it feel like a reward? But yeah, I've been told that Fallout 4 is a lot of fun if you really enjoy the base building aspect of it. I've also been told that Fallout 4 is really terrible if you enjoy the base building aspect of it. I've gotten a lot of mixed opinions on the base building. But what I have been told is that basically Fallout 4 almost revolves around the settlements in entirety. And that like I hadn't done the settlement thing because it seemed tedious. Like I didn't want to maintain a settlement for a bunch of dumb computers. So I didn't do it. But I've been told that I should have, because if I enjoyed the settlement building, if I enjoyed anything about it, then that's really the heart of the game. And if I didn't enjoy it, then I was right to just quit playing, because it doesn't get any better than the settlement building. So I've had friends that kind of enjoyed the settlement building and therefore kind of enjoyed Fallout 4. And then I had friends that really hated it and they just didn't really want to play. And I don't know, like I've heard weird things about it. Like I've heard that apparently like enemies will attack your settlements if they're not defended well enough. But when they do attack the settlements, they don't like go through the gates. They just kind of like spawn on top of the settlement. So I read a story about this guy who set up like an elaborate maze for the NPCs to go through with like a tower defense scheme. But then when he got to his settlement to help defend it, he found that all the enemies had just spawned in the middle of town. So they like they hadn't even gone through the tower defense maze. And since a lot of the towers were on the perimeter, they weren't even like firing like the guns were on like the perimeter. They weren't even firing inward at the guys because like the maze situation had made it to where the tower like it just screwed it all. So it's just like, so what was the point? I didn't understand. So what he started doing instead is he just started putting like turrets in the middle of town because that was where the enemies spawned, and that was more effective. Just having like a bunch of turrets sitting in the middle of town was more effective than building like an elaborate rat maze. Yeah. So I've heard lots of disappointments about the system and everything like that, and you know, I don't know what they're gonna do with Fallout or what they plan to do. It's kind of weird. I know it was different companies. One company built New Vegas, and then Bethesda's I don't know. They're a little weird. Like I don't know if you can always rely on them to be good writers. In fact, a lot of times they're really bad writers. I'll be honest. Most of the times I really dislike their writing, but you know, I still enjoy the game. I really like the settings. You know, they're built with really good settings, and I fear that maybe what's happening with Bethesda now is that maybe all their good setting writers and all their talented writers are no longer with the company. So now they're kind of going forward and they're doing things like advancing the settings by 200 years or whatever, and then finding that when they do that, they have to sort of make new lore. And because all the good writers are gone, they're kind of like not making very good lore for this far advanced setting. And it's kind of like, well, you know, I really kind of like the way things were. You know, you get this with like what game? The Elder Scrolls, stuff like that, where like the Elder Scrolls kind of for a lot of the games, they hype up all this stuff. You know, like Morrowind felt very alien, very different. There was all this cultural stuff going on. There were all these stories, all these weird things, all this kind of talk of like, well, you know, the world is a dream, and I go to the side of the world and I look at it funny and I see the tower tilted sideways, and now I'm Kim, whatever, I can do anything I want, all this like weird crazy stuff. And then you kind of get into like Oblivion, and it's sort of like it's the English countryside, and then it was like, well, this was all supposed to be sprawling jungle, and they were like, no, sprawling countryside is easier to render. Like, it's just we're not doing sprawling jungle. And then Skyrim was at least a frozen land, but like some people are talking about like, oh, what if they do Valenwood next? And then everyone's like, no, don't do Valenwood because there's all this cool lore about Valenwood. You don't understand. If you've read the lore about Valenwood, like, it's so awesome, and Bethesda will just suck all the life out of it. Like, you're gonna go, like, there's supposed to be these cities that they're like these living, moving cities, and Bethesda will make the cities. I think the cities actually in lore have already taken root or something like that, and so they don't move anymore. And I believe that's probably something that they established in anticipation for them, because making cities that move all around the map would probably be super hard to design from a game perspective. So, I don't know. It's weird, but at least Skyrim, like, the gameplay was good enough, and there were so many different ways to play the game that it turns out I've put like hundreds of hours into Skyrim. I recently checked it and couldn't believe it. But yeah, I just play the game, and I've never done an illusion mage. I've never done a conjuration mage. I've never done an alteration mage. I've never done archer. I've relied too much on sneak in the past. This time I'm not going to rely on sneak, and so I just keep making new characters and exploring a different, character skill build or character build to see how it works. And just by doing that over and over and over again, even though I'm not terribly impressed with the writing, still enjoy the game. So yes. That was another thing that really hurt Fallout 4, was I think that they finally dumbed everything down to the point where character build was not really a factor. So it was kind of like you play the game once and that's all you need to do. Because the rest of the game is really not anything to write home about. The writing's not very good. It'd be like I don't play Skyrim for the main quest. The main quest is actually really frustrating. I hate the Greybeards. They talk forever. Like, I really wish the Greybeards had a shut up option. Like, I got a shout that was just like shut up, and it made them shut up. But Fallout 4, you're just dealing with like, oh, it's the main plot, and you have really the one character build and the one character background, and that's it. So it sort of eliminates, there's not very much intrigue, there's really not very much to get invested in emotionally, and then mechanically there's also not a lot to really experiment with or play with. So the game kind of maintains its exact state throughout, and that's kind of unfortunate. So I hope that whenever they get around to making another game, that maybe they bring back enough complexity that you can kind of branch into different things, so that, even if the story writing isn't very good, the gameplay will at least be interesting, and you'll be compelled to do different things with it. So, yes, my voice is going out. I finished that lozenge I had, and I'm starting to feel the pain of talking for too long. So it's time to wrap this up. I got a Let's Play to do. I got to spend all day shrieking into a mic, putting myself in pain, and yeah. This is going to be a busy week this week. This was a really terrible time to catch a cold. But anyway, though, thanks for joining me, everybody. I'll catch you all next time.